And welcome to the SpartanMag.com VCast from Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk, Madison Square Garden, New York City, Michigan State. You saw it overtime. They lose to Kansas State 98-93. Great game. College basketball fans all over the country had to love that one. Back and forth, lead changes, spectacular individual performances by players, most notably Marquis Noel, point guard for Kansas State. He was excellent. Kansas State proved a lot of things to me. I talked last night in the VCast and also a couple weeks ago about Kansas State and the shot selection. And we saw it a little bit on consecutive plays in overtime when Noel missed that shot from the logo. And then Johnson had that fadeaway with a foot on the three-point line. Some of that three-point shooting reasons I didn't believe in this team crept back in at that point. But for the most part, for 42 of the 45 minutes, they resisted some of those urges and showed a version of themselves that I hadn't seen. If I'd seen that, I would have been more of a believer. But in person, there's quickness, and that point guard is just Noel just has that court vision, sets things up so well for his teammates, and had a great offensive day for his team. Michigan State had a very good offensive day too, but not enough in overtime against this Kansas State team that deserves the right to go to the lead 8.
I feel like they did make some mistakes, or they did make some poor shots, and it's easy to overlook those because of the number of good shots that they're getting. And I think, again, Noel deserves a ton of credit. Michigan State didn't play great ball screen defense in this game. There's a lot of back cuts, and Jaden Akins got burned a bunch of times on back cuts, and so there's lots of stuff you can go over and say, if this goes Michigan State's way. I feel like for all the mistakes that Michigan State did make, it wasn't something that you're going to say like, hey, we didn't leave it all out there on the floor. I feel like Michigan State did leave it all out on the floor. I think the areas that they can get better at, or they should have been better at, was, my pet peeve is when a guy puts up a shot and someone has an opportunity to get a rebound, and sometimes they let it go out of bounds. Now, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that one AJ Hogard, I believe it's Hogard, that blocked a shot or got a tip on that three-point shot, and it ends up
which was one of those bad shot selection shots,
right,
by the way.
Right, it's a bad shot selection shot, but there's several times where you can't, in my opinion, you can't let the ball go out of bounds. And I'm not sure who was there to get that, but that's one of those things that oftentimes can be, especially when you have video replay, the difference in winning and losing. Or the other thing I would say is there was a couple times, I can think of at least 3 different occasions where there should have been defensive rebounds, and there would have been, or nearly were, that ended up in Kansas State shots. Now, they only got 6 offensive rebounds in the first half that I can think of, but a couple of those ended up in three-pointers. Mady Sissoko went way the heck up in the air for what would have been a really, really impressive rebound. Now, he came down, he didn't corral it. The thing ends up a three-point shot. And in games like this, you can talk about like the obvious errors or like them hitting crazy shots, but it's the little things, like clearing defensive rebounds. And when Michigan State did clear defensive rebounds, when they were rebounding well at the beginning of the game, that's when they were able to run. So you can talk about all these different little things, but credit to Kansas State. That point guard does what a point guard is supposed to. It makes everybody better around him, and he made a believer out of me. I did believe in him a little bit or a lot, but I didn't know he could. I didn't expect him to be transformative in terms of taking this team to a new height. And you could, for those of you that weren't here, you can tell how good a point guard is when you got Mateen Cleaves and Isaiah Thomas and Steve Smith all sitting next to each other, like on the court side, doing double takes the entire time. They were very, very impressed with him, and as they should be. He was phenomenal, and then the drama of him coming back from the ankle injury, that was pretty good as well. Michigan State, to their credit, fought back, and it felt like they were going to win at times, but they didn't make enough plays. And Kansas State deserves to go on to this next round. And I would be really, really sad if Kansas State didn't go to the Final Four, based on what I saw tonight. And who would have thought that FAU is standing between Kansas State and the Final Four? You and I both saw that team twice last week, and it's shocking to me that Tennessee lost this game. I didn't watch it because I'm working, and that's a problem. That's a problem when you're like covering the first game. But every once in a while, I looked up and Larry Serrato's there making calls, and I wonder, Tennessee got an official that's going to call physical contact, and then that would not surprise me.
Tennessee, I guess I'm not surprised that the wheels kind of fell off. I am surprised that FAU won. I guess I'm surprised. I'm not surprised Tennessee kind of didn't finish. As far as Michigan State goes, on that key play with the blocked air ball out of bounds, I didn't see either which Michigan State player could have had a chance to get it.
Was there.
Yeah, and I watched Izzo from across the court as they were huddling. Izzo just kind of smiled and said, grab the ball. If you grab it there, you're down one.
And he said in the huddle after in the off podium huddle afterwards, he believes. I mean, he indicated that it was Malik Hall, but his quote on that was, he thought it wasn't blocked. He's going to take a chance there, but you don't take chances there. I mean, Izzo's not going to say, "Hey, Malik Hall, you shouldn't have taken a chance there." But like when one little thing changes things one way or the other, you just can't. You can't do those type of things.
Yeah, and I haven't had another look at that one yet either. He decided not to, so he must have had a concern about where his foot was on the line and what his balance would have been if he had grabbed it. But if he grabs it there, Michigan State's down a point with about 27 seconds to go. Instead, they retain possession, and I said in the pre-tip read that Kansas State is very good with baseline inbound plays, and they got Masood open. I said Masood was a good shooter coming off the bench, 40%. That baseline, it's an 18-footer.
And it was contested pretty well, I thought.
Malik Hall got on him pretty good. They ran a good play, got a baseline shot. Now it's a three-point game. Then Michigan State, you saw it happen, trying to get a game-tying shot there at the end. And a lot of brave guys that have taken some big shots all year, but they all kind of passed it up. This has been a very unselfish team all season, and maybe a little too unselfish there in the final seconds.
I felt like in the first half, the unselfishness of Michigan State was a problem. I felt like there were times where the guys weren't taking they weren't taking shots that they'd be contested on runouts on closeouts, but in games like this, you've got to take those shots and you have to make them. They're not bad shots. It depends on who's doing it. I didn't feel, to be honest with you, that like Tyson Walker in the first half, and even when he came in the locker room, he was struggling with his shot. He was working really hard to get that the perimeter look to go down. He did a nice job hitting a couple in the corner in the second half, where I don't think he was thinking about it too much, but I felt like there were times where he was a little bit hesitant to shoot. There were other times where guys were hesitant to shoot, but Michigan State had so many good things going downhill in the second half with A.J. Hogarth splitting that defense, getting to the rim, finishing through contact in many occasions.
He's so good at that. And that was the one thing he was good at as a freshman. When he had other problems, he could really Earl Campbell his way through defenders.
Right, but you can't you got to pick your spot. One of the things he's done a good job with this year, and Michigan State's encouraged him to do that, is to pick your spots with it. Like if you do it too much and you're everybody shrinks everything into the lane, then you can't do it. I mean, he waited till the second half when they needed it. He also hit a big three. I felt like Michigan State got some good shots that didn't fall. I feel like Malik Hall, again for the second straight game, had some good open perimeter looks that didn't fall. And
if those had fallen, I mean, he would have had an amazing game because he was doing. I mean, not amazing game because he did damage on the offensive glass
for where he was at, for what for this version of him. And Izzo said afterwards that he's still not Malik Hall. But again, we saw the jump hook.
Yeah, jump hook,
the drives.
Saw drive and finish and putbacks.
Yeah.
If the perimeter game had been there, it would have been like almost the complete Malik Hall package you would have wanted in October on time, but a couple shots short.
So I think if you're like looking for a glass half full type deal, well, I think a lot of things are glass half full with this whole season because I think Michigan State really hit its ceiling. They could have beat this team. Could have easily gone to the Final Four. Sometimes things work their way out like that. But this team, I think, gave everything they had. It was imperfect at times, but no one thought going into this season that it was going to be a perfect deal. I think.
If you'd have said Elite Eight going into the season, and then
even if you said Sweet 16, listen, I felt, and I'll be honest with you, I felt with the schedule that they were playing, with the guys that they had coming back, I felt like these guys could develop into something, but I felt like they take it on the chin as well, and there's a chance that Michigan State might not make the NCAA tournament just because of the schedule that they played. To go what Michigan State went through in terms of injuries, not having a reliable post scorer, to having to do everything with guards, pretty dang impressive. And Michigan State just ran into a Kansas State team that happened to play one of its best games of the year this year.
Might have been their best.
And you look at Michigan State was that team last game out against Marquette.
Yeah.
Marquette ran into the same type of deal in a multi-game series. I think Michigan State wins that series.
You're right.
But I felt like when they got it to overtime, they were creeping up, but they just didn't quite get it done. But this was a good season for Michigan State. I think they've got some stuff to build on moving forward. If Malik Hall can get that 3-point shot down, if he can get to the point where he's looking for that jump hook with as well as he drives, if he's able to finish at the lane, if he's able to not just drive but create for others, that's a big deal. A.J. Hogarth's taken mammoth steps this year. This is a huge game for him as well. You could see him reining in his tendencies at time, but then taking over when he had to, and he's shown a lot of growth. If he continues to show growth, his ceiling is really high. A lot of guys did a nice job. I think Madi Sissoko, even though tonight wasn't his best his best night, I think he ended the season on an upward trajectory, and I'm excited to see where he goes. Same with Carson Cooper.
Yeah, they were not real happy with Sissoko. That's why he didn't play much. After the first 15 minutes or so, I asked Izzo what was going on there, and Izzo was like, "Man, I don't know. It just wasn't there for Maddie tonight." I'd have to go back and watch it again to see exactly what Izzo was disappointed about there. Michigan State going small. It wasn't great, it wasn't bad. It's what they did. Malik Hall rebounded pretty well in those situations when they were small. Missed that big free throw, could have tied it with 42 seconds left. And that's what set up the airball situation.
I firmly believe that because they went small and him and Joey played as many minutes as they did as a 4 and the 5, that reduces your likelihood of making tough free throws down the stretch. I mean, you could see both Joey Hauser and Malik Hall grabbing their shorts down the stretch on several different occasions. And, they had to do it. Izzo felt like they had to do it, but you got to get a little bit more out of your bigs. And then I think some of those free throws, go in. Joey Hauser missed a front end of a 1-and-1 with about, 5 or 6 minutes left, and with the chance to tie it. And then Kansas State goes down and hits a 3 right on the very next possession. I just felt like Hauser played a lot of minutes. And the thing about Hauser's minutes that he played tonight, I don't know what his final minute total was, but every time they went to give him a rest or tried to give him a rest, something bad happened and they had to get him back in there. And, that's where you get into those rotation issues. And,
he played 38. And by the way, Hauser got caught on the court. Remember early in the game when there were the second media timeout, it took forever to get to the under 12 or whatever. The under 16 timeout, it was the first media timeout, went to 12 minutes. It went like 3 minutes too long.
Right.
And Michigan State had subbed, I think, everybody else out except for maybe Walker. And Hauser was tired. So he played like the first 7 minutes, and it was intense. You wouldn't think someone would get tired in 7 minutes, but he came back in and he was refreshed. But those minutes add up, 38 minutes. when Tyson Walker hit that three-pointer to go up 3 points in overtime, it gave Michigan State a 3-point lead. I looked over at Izzo, and Izzo finally looked at the court and just smiled.
Yeah,
and he said after the game that he thought it was a team of destiny. At that point, thought they were going to win, and that was a clear out. Izzo called for a clear out, wanted Walker to go to work against Johnson as it was, hit that 3-pointer top of the key, up 3 minutes to go. Problem is, Kansas State scored on all of their remaining possessions. I think 6 straight possessions they scored.
And I wonder too, when a guy hits a big shot like that, I wonder sometimes if you start to buy it when you're on the court. I felt like, I'm not saying that Michigan State relaxed or anything like that, but I wonder if subconsciously maybe they thought, hey, we've got this now. There's a lot of smiles, and I would have liked to have seen more scowls after that.
Well, and one of those 6 was that backdoor reverse jam that Johnson put down, and it was the umpteenth backdoor cut that they had scored on. And I asked Izzo about that at the post-game podium, and I asked Montgomery about it outside the locker room, and both of them said the same thing. They feel like that the defense away from the ball got to, the word was mesmerized. They felt they were mesmerized by Noel and got caught on some back cuts. I watched Kansas State a few times this year. I don't remember the back cut being that much of a big deal. I thought Michigan State would play that pack line defense, keep Noel out of the lane, and react out late to mediocre shooters. Now Masood's a good shooter, and he was great tonight. But Sills goes 1 out of 3, and Carter I think was 1 out of 3. Make those guys beat you. Instead, Michigan State got caught too far out, gave up those back cuts to that point guard with that great vision.
To be honest with you,
I've never seen a Michigan State team, and in 28 years, I've not seen a Michigan State team get beaten by as many back cuts as they got beat tonight.
Yeah, and Jaden Akins, I'd like to talk. Well, I'd like to talk to him after the summer. Like if I see him at Moneyball or something like that, he probably, he's a great kid, and I'd hate to, didn't want to ask him about that tonight, but I would like to know, in retrospect, weeks from now, what he's thinking about that, because he's usually pretty good at, sharing his thoughts on things on defense that don't go quite well. I honestly feel like the whole Sills thing, I thought it was beneficial for them when he got in foul trouble.
Yeah.
Because he's the ringleader of some of the dumb stuff that happens, and and I think they're a little bit more sound. I think one of the things that really impressed me about Noel is he missed his first 2 shots in this game, and I didn't feel like he tried to do too much in terms of as a shooter. He was
not even those logo shots.
Well, at the end, that was at the end. But I'm saying, like in that first half, on his way to a 10, he set the tone with his passing and his assists in the first half by not trying to do too much. Mm-hmm. He's the guy that I thought coming into this, him playing in his backyard, that he's going to start, hoisting shots up. No, he didn't. He got it going as a facilitator first, and then at times, he took some circus shots, but he played under control.
Yeah, he did. And Michigan State being mesmerized and giving up those back cuts, that is partly due to the fact that it's so hard to simulate a guy like Noel in practice. And the Big Ten, I think, I agree with Izzo, it's a pretty good conference, even though they've got no one going on to the Elite Eight. But there's no one in the Big Ten that can give you that kind of look as just an assassin of a point guard. When the mesmerized situation came into play, like Montgomery and Izzo said, it's hard to simulate what it's going to look like till you're on the court with that guy. And Michigan State got pantsed a little bit on that, and that's rare.
I've seen a lot of really good point guards, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone deliver the ball as quickly.
He fires it too.
Yeah, it's these one-handed bullet passes, like he's like a quarterback. He's a gunslinger, man, and those one-handed passes, you just don't see it. And
there was a big one he had to Masood on a flare on the right side in the first half, and he's just looking at. I've been watching Kansas State filming it. A lot of times he'll it's something with his eyes, and they know it, and all of a sudden there's a flare screen, and boom, and it's across court, and you can't get out on it, and the guy hits a 3. It's a tricky little thing.
The other thing I would say is the last guy I remember throwing in transition bounce passes, when guys are in the lane. I mean, he throws good bounce passes a la Denzel Valentine at his best, and that's another hard thing to simulate. Those long bounce passes with spin where it's coming right off the floor at a weird angle, but it's going right to the shooter. It's for what looks unorthodox at times. The way he passes, it's super effective, and he's dynamic. I can't remember too many point guards Michigan State facing, or at Michigan State that passes as fast as he does. I mean, it is it's fast, but it's also. It's right in the right spot, so it's not going to go off someone's hands.
And they're on the same page with him. They're cutting right before the passes, in its trigger mechanism, makes it difficult to stop. And Michigan State's players gave them a lot of credit for just being a difficult team to stop. Meanwhile, they get plus performance out of Masood coming off the bench, 4 out of 6 from three-point range, and that big baseline jumper late. Yeah. That was the difference. Michigan State, as good as Noel was, the assists were great. He scores 20 points. That's good. But the little extra from Masood was Izzo counts the points off turnovers as being the big problem, and he gave himself blame for not making Masood a bigger deal on the scouting report. But credit to Kansas State, they went deep into their roster and found something from a stretch 4, Robert Horry style. When you've got a stretch 4 hitting threes.
From as deep as where he was, because there was a couple where his feet were in the NCAA tournament logo.
That's how teams move on in this tournament. That's how teams move on in the NBA. Michigan State got it from Hauser, and maybe one more could have sent it into double overtime. Didn't happen. Valiant effort by Michigan State. Entertaining game, entertaining season. Program's in good shape. People were asking Izzo and some players about next year, and Izzo wants to build off this and go deeper next year. There's already talk about that. And Izzo said, but we have to wait to see what happens with musical chairs, see who we've got left. And that's where college basketball now has a silly season that it's never had in the past. I'm expecting, gotta wait. I guess I'm not expecting anything when it comes to. I'm expecting Malik Hall to come back.
Right.
Tyson Walker just got to look at it to see what kind of money's out there for him. Overseas G League, he's small draft wise. NIL, is here watching. What kind of package could he get to come back? He's not sure because he's not looked at those things yet. I'm not sure what it's going to be because this is still a new frontier.
Right. So one of the things I'm going to say right now, and if you look at in terms of Michigan State's personnel that they've got potentially coming back, you look at the recruiting class that they've got coming in, a super highly ranked recruiting class. The one thing that they need is they need a shooter like a Tyson Walker, a guy that can create for himself and shoot from anywhere. I think A.J. Hogarth is going to get better as a shooter, and I think Jaden Akins is going to take another step as a shooter. The thing that made Michigan State really tough this year in terms of their three-point shot is the stretch four element that Joey Hauser provided. They're not going to have that, so that's going to hurt. Right, I don't care who you've got coming in or who you've got.
Can Hall be a 40%, 39%?
Yeah, I think he can. I think he can. I think he's got to get to the point. I think
40 would be good.
Listen, I think he's got to get to the point where he's going to shoot like Joey Hauser did this year. There's been several games where Joey Hauser misses his first two threes. They might not look great coming off his hand, but does Joey Hauser ever worry about his shot form? Does he worry about his mechanics? I haven't seen it this year. He just keeps on going, and he has that confidence. Malik Hall needs to have that confidence. And throughout his career, we've seen these stretches where he can take a game over, but he needs to have the same type of confidence in his shot as he has in his ability to put the ball on the floor. I think he's got to be able to shoot or score depending on what the circumstances dictate. And what I mean by that is there's going to be times where he gets in the lane, uses the ability to drive, and does that jump hook. Or maybe an elbow jumper a la, Joey Hauser this year. But what he can't do if he wants to be that stretch floor is what he can't do is get the ball open on the wing in position to shoot a three and decide, hey, I might not like my shot right now, so I'm going to dribble into traffic and shoot. You got to take what they give you, and that's one of the things about being a stretch floor. It's not like, hey, only shooting threes. It's there's going to be teams that run Michigan State's stretch floor off the line, so you got to be able to put it on the floor and do some damage that way. So I guess that's my concern. Like if a Tyson Walker doesn't come back, you're like, well, Jaden Akins shot 40% from three, but it's like if you look at an NFL team, and I'm going back to showing my old manness here, but you go back to the Kurt Warner, greatest show on turf, Colts, and the reason why all those receivers were so good is because they had four really good receivers. And, like Jaden Akins got 40% from three this year because people had to stop Joey Hauser and people had to stop Tyson Walker. You see it over and over again in college basketball. Why isn't this guy shooting a high percentage this year? Because he's the top of the scouting report. And Michigan State had the pieces this year, where there's a lot of top of the scouting report worthy people. Jaden Akins was a guy that you just have to roll the dice with. You want to stop him, but you can't always do that. Who are the shooters going to be for Michigan State next year? And Tyson Walker would be a really, really nice piece. He's the type of player that if he were to come back, that's how these teams are. That's how when I look at when people, former coaches, analysts talk about getting old and staying old. Yeah. Those are the kind of guys that take a Sweet 16 team and make them a real national championship contender. If a guy like that goes back with the intent of winning a championship, and he has the pieces around him.
With Hogarth. And we mentioned Hall as a stretch four because, they will be four of their better players next year. So Hall wants to be a wing, but does he move to the four and you convince him that it's positionless so that he and Akins can both start?
I think you have to.
Yeah, and that's why I'm talking about Hall in terms of a four.
Yeah, and I think, really, I think you can get him – he's got to be more comfortable with shooting threes because I really think as a four-man, and you've seen it's like going all the way back to Calvin Torber, you can get your four-man, some really good face-up, top of the circle type threes, and Hall can buy into that. What I would tell him is I'd be like, hey, dude, this is the era of positionless basketball, so the four-man isn't your traditional thinking of a four-man. Yeah, you got to go inside and use those kind of skills, but essentially we're playing four guards here. That's, you want to turn that around and turn it on its head. And on the flip side, I think with a guy like Booker coming in, we've talked about this, all the talent in the world, tons of physical ability. lacks a lot of seasoning, lacks what I would say on-court experience at a very high level. A guy like Malik Hall would be such a value to this team, taking a lot of pressure off Xavier Booker. But also you look in terms of just winning and losing, if Xavier Booker has to learn under fire, Michigan State's going to take some L's because of that. And I'm not saying that doesn't make him a bad player, but you talk about two of the better players in the Big Ten, two of the most versatile players in the Big Ten, Tyson Walker and Malik Hall. You saw Tyson Walker's point guard value tonight too at times. And I think that's one of the things it's going to be my takeaway with this Big Ten, with the NCAA tournament. Tyson Walker has played some really dang good minutes as a point guard, and he just gives you so many different things. Selfishly, I think it would be great for him to come back, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad move on his part. To come back because
especially if the money's right.
Yeah, if the money's right also, but if you have a monster year and you lead your team to a national championship or something like that, or you're the guy and you're willing to, and you're scoring, between 17 and 22 points a night, and you do that on a consistent basis, and you're looking for your shots and you're taking good shots, and you're that straw that stirs a drink, there's guys that maybe wouldn't get drafted otherwise that do get drafted because of that. And so I don't see like that's necessarily a bad thing for him.
All right, so an entertaining run for Michigan State. Give him a lot of credit for kicking it in and getting it done and beating a very good Marquette team to make this happen, getting into the Sweet 16. Walking here to the arena tonight, I was telling Paul, I'm like, I just feel good that there's no Duke around and there's no North Carolina, no Kentucky, no Louisville. Losing to Marquette would have been it would have put a damper on the season. That was good, but Kansas State, give them credit, as kind of a new flavor to get beat by. They've not been this far in a long time, so give credit to them. I don't know if they've been to the Final Four.
1950s or 60s.
Yeah, Tex Winter was the coach back then. The old triangle offense. It was an interior triangle back then.
The only reason I know
triple
that,
post.
I'm gonna give myself up. The only reason I know that is I'm surrounded by surrounded by Kansas State writers, and they're talking about it. It's not like I actually knew that.
Check out the big brain on Paul.
No, check out the. Well, I guess my ears aren't good either. My hearing's going, but yeah. I heard enough around me to. It's impressive. It also makes you, when you hear stuff like that, it makes you appreciate what Michigan State has done. What Tom Izzo has done, and this tournament is so amazing because good teams that should be advancing don't. I think personally, I still feel that Michigan State's a better team than Kansas State. In some ways, I know that.
I think Kansas State took it up a notch. We talked about Michigan State growing, and they grew against Marquette. I think Kansas State grew tonight. And I got to give them credit for that.
They took it up a notch within the game. The way the game started out, there's like a 7-minute stretch in there, like it was all tied up or close to, or maybe Michigan State was leading by a couple points, and Kansas State really took it up a notch and really, really asserted some physicality. They hustled for. They started getting 50-50 balls that Michigan State was getting early, so I give them a lot of credit for that. One thing that I think to watch for in the next year is Izzo does not like the way they rebounded this year in terms of by program standards. And, like in the offseason, he'll always have his rallying cries and whatnot. I think Michigan State did a nice job with chemistry. I think they've got good pieces and good people on this team. But Tom Izzo is going to want more boards, and, that's going to be one of his rallying cries.
And Cooper has a lot of improvement he can do. Kohler can improve a lot.
Once Cooper gets the upper body strength to go with the lower body strength, and he spends all summer long shooting free throws, that's the next step for him. I mean, he's got to – he's like it's a grab bag going to the free throw line for him. So, if he really wants to play a lot of minutes in a lot of big situations, he really has to get that free throw shooting down. His hands have gotten better over the course of the year, but upper body strength is going to be the next frontier for him.
And it was noteworthy today that he played. It seemed like a lot more minutes than 11, but he played 11 minutes. He went in there for 3 or 4 shifts. Saw some time at the power forward. We're only like the second or third time this year out there on the court with Sissoko, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And then Hall was at the 3. So I mean, they kept putting more and more on Cooper. Cooper one time did not get out for a 3-pointer, I think, on Massoud in the first half, and he heard about it. He heard about it from Izzo. He heard about it from Hogarth too. There's intensity and a lot of program standards were upheld in a lot of ways today and throughout the tournament. but not enough against a Kansas State team that elevated their game tonight.
There's no shame in this loss. Maybe disappointment, and I understand that. And there's all these different things that
I'm ashamed because Kansas State's better than I thought they were.
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't count though.
Right, but there's no shame in this loss. I mean, Kansas State played as good as they can, in my opinion.
Yeah, they took it up a notch. They needed to, and they did. They're still growing too, so credit to them. Anything else, Paul? Paul Konyndyk, Jim Comparoni, been watching the VCast from Madison Square Garden, New York City, SpartanMag.com.